You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. Football Tigers hit the practice field for the first time in the Brian Kelly era. I love what Brian Kelly did. A shorter practice. Let's be efficient, sort of was the mantra. And we got to see everybody out there except for Boutte and Major Burns. So a relatively healthy LSU football team heading into this spring drills. And Brian Kelly put it out there that this team is out there ready to prove all of the doubters wrong.
I love the energy, the enthusiasm. There's an incredible want to. Look, I mean, I'll tell you, they want to change the narrative. You know, they want to be a championship team, and they know it takes hard work. It takes a commitment, and this was one practice towards that. So I would say, you know, from my perspective, it's what we've seen from the guys in terms of great energy, a real incredible, I would say, attention to all the little things that we've asked in meetings, on time, and that's a big thing for us right now.
So a couple of things from the practice specifically. All four quarterbacks were out there, and the way they divided reps was seniority. So it was based on when you arrived on campus. So Miles Brennan went first, Garrett Nussmeier second, Walker Howard went third, and then the Arizona State transfer Jaden Daniels was next. This was obviously also an opportunity for Joe Sloan, the new quarterbacks coach, to get out there and work with his pupils. Here's Brian Kelly talking about the new quarterback coach, Joe Sloan, working with the guys on Thursday's practice.
This is so much about how you talk and how you communicate. And, you know, that position, you know, requires incredibly detailed communication because they are, you know, obviously, you know, running your offense. They got the ball in their hand. And so, you know, you need somebody that is really good at certainly the big picture offensively and understanding what we're trying to accomplish. But he really has to do a great job of building relationships. You've got to be able to trust him. And, you know, he just is a guy that has that kind of character, and the kids will trust him because of who he is as a person.
Joe Sloan, of course, we all know, was at Louisiana Tech and now is the quarterbacks coach under Brian Kelly. It's nice to see a quarterbacks coach. That's something we talked about for a lot of years here, was the lack of a specific position quarterback coach. You have that now in Joe Sloan. One of the other things Brian Kelly, if you remember, talked about on Wednesday when he met with the media was part of the reason that they delayed the start of spring practice was conditioning. And if you remember, he was asked, you know, why start after spring break? He said it's not going to be like this in the future, that, you know, eventually they will split spring drills with spring break in the middle because you don't have to count those days. Again, you have to do your 15 practices in X amount of days, and you don't have to count spring break as days, so you can sort of lengthen out the time. And he said that's the way it's going to be in the future, but they were physically not ready to practice earlier. So what about the conditioning heading into the first day of spring? Here was Brian Kelly.
Their conditioning level, Jake Flint and his staff have done an incredible job. We run a drill called 88s, which is a high tempo, 8 plays with the first group, 8 plays with the second. And on the first day, generally, you get guys that are, you know, bent over, huffing and puffing, and there was none of that. So that's a real indication of their conditioning level and that staff getting them ready for spring practice.
So that's fantastic. That in and of itself is the fact that you've got a team that is conditioned to be out there for 15 practices when a month ago, 6 weeks ago, it didn't seem that way. Big part of that, keep in mind, follow the timeline. You had 39 available scholarship players for the bowl game on January the 4th when Brian Kelly was hired, right? So you're talking about guys that were, for whatever reason, injured, academic ineligibility, portal, whatever it is, that weren't working out. Then you had this long period. Jacob Flint comes in, the new strength and conditioning coordinator, got these guys in better shape, and he was very detailed there with the 80H drill. Like you said, you have 8 guys out there. 8 plays for the first team, 8 plays for the second team. Usually they're huffing and puffing, but by and large, they seem to fare pretty well with the drills yesterday to open spring. So, a couple of other things. Can you play 9, please? Because one more there. He did talk about pushing spring back and why that helped. Just one more thought there from Brian Kelly.
It was helpful. Yeah, giving us a little bit more time with them. And I will tell you where it helped us a little bit too is getting more guys back on the field. We only had 2 players today, 2 that were on scholarship that did not participate. Kayshawn and Major Burns. That's it. Everybody else was in some kind of participation, whether it could be limited in some fashion, but just to have 2 guys based upon where we were, back in, January when I sat in Bo's office and looked at the board going, I don't know how we're going to do this. To get to 2 and Major's moving around and Kayshawn obviously is going to get healthy. So I think it was the prudent move to push it back.
Brian Kelly meeting with the media after his first practice out at LSU. A couple more things. He was asked about the freshmen and how they looked at their first practice.
Will Campbell, the offensive lineman, is just a beast. I mean, physically, he has the makeup physically to compete, in his first year. Will he? I couldn't tell you right now. It's too early to tell. But, the way he's kind of shown himself in the weight room, he has the physical traits to compete early on. I'm not here to, pound the table for him that he's ready to start, but physically, he doesn't look like a normal freshman offensive lineman coming in. Walker obviously is a talented freshman quarterback, but again, we're talking about championship level football, and you need a little bit of experience for that. So when I talk about some of these guys, they're very, very talented, but you're comparing them to Alabama, A&M, great football teams with experienced players. So that's the difference.
The Will Campbell comments are very encouraging. I don't know if Will Campbell's going to step in day one. The hardest position to step in day one as a freshman and be a starter is on the offensive line, really on both lines of scrimmage, just because of the level of physicality. We talked about this so much, but if you're at Neville, and Will Campbell's at Neville, and he was a great player there, but there's just a marked difference pushing around high school defensive linemen and trying to go compete with dudes that are your size when you're 18. So, yeah, Will Campbell, he's got it all, and maybe he'll be that guy that can step in day one and be a starter, but I don't know if necessarily that's the expectation, and I like that Brian Kelly had it measured right there. The other thing was about Matt House. Again, we're going to learn what LSU wants to do defensively. They started by, we didn't get to see any team periods. Media didn't get to see team periods, but they started sort of in a base 3-4, and when you looked at the inside backers and the people who were out there, Greg Penn was one of your starters. We're wondering how those rotations are going to go. It was Mike Jones, Greg Penn. We're expecting Micah Baskerville is going to play a huge role on this team, maybe in that Damone Clark role, but you got a lot of guys at linebacker, a lot of bodies. They got to figure out a rotation. You bring in West Weeks. Of course, you're going to have Harold Perkins on campus as well. So a lot of spots where you added bodies, so you now have numbers, but how is that depth and everything going to shake out? That's going to be a fascinating test case, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. Here was Brian Kelly on Matt House's first day with the defense.
He doesn't overcomplicate it, right? I mean, you got to be great in third down. You've got to be a great situational defense. You've got to mix things up. I don't want to dumb this down in any shape or form because I think everybody knows football in here, right? But you still have to get energy. You have to get guys running to the football, and there has to be a simplicity to that. And so the way he teaches, the way he communicates, he can get to that line quickly with the kids. And on day one, you could see that. If you were out there for any of the practice, you could see there's a great energy. And look, his record speaks for itself. He's been able to do it, wherever he's been a defensive coordinator. And, I saw it today. Great energy on the defensive side of the ball.
Great energy on the defensive side, and that's something we're all hoping comes back here to LSU. You've had 2 lackluster years on the defensive side of the ball. The Bo Pelini experiment was an abject disaster for half the season a year ago with Durante Jones. It was terrible, in large part because we now know Ed Ogeron wasn't letting him blitz and had his hands all in everything they were doing. Now you get Matt House in there, Brian Kelly. He even said the way he divides his time, 70% thereabouts going to be on the offensive side of the ball, and the rest will be defense and special teams. But you're looking at a guy that, in Brian Kelly is an offensive-minded coach who's going to let his defensive coordinator, Matt House, have his say on the defensive side of the ball. That's what a good coach does. You hire good coordinators. You let the people you hire do their jobs. You delegate responsibility and you let people work. And it looked like it's just day one. I'm not going to go overboard with it. And they're not even in pads, obviously. But I love the fact that they went 90 minutes. I love the fact that they were efficient. I love the fact that there was a purpose with what they did. I love the fact that they were healthy, only 2 players missing. I love the fact that they were conditioned, weren't huffing and puffing. All of those things, anecdotally, are very positive steps. It doesn't mean you're going to beat Alabama and win a natty year one, but it means you're doing little things to start to change they had this sort of sea change within the program, which desperately needs it. So day one in the books. Tigers are off today. They'll practice again on Saturday, which is when we'll have the first opportunity to speak with some of the players about how the transition's going with Brian Kelly. So one of 15 in the books here in spring with Brian Kelly and the Tigers. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.